I found out I wasn't wanted on Thanksgiving at exactly 9:47 p.m. the night before, and it wasn't because anyone had the guts to tell me to my face. My name is Sarah, I'm 43 years old, and I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I'd been divorced. I'd been laid off. I'd watched friends drift away when my life got messy. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for the moment you realize your own blood has erased you from the family portrait while you're still breathing. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world tonight, drop a comment and let me know where you are. Because wherever you're from, I bet you know exactly what it feels like to be the one left out. The one they whisper about. The one they don't invite but pretend they forgot to call. If that's you, stay with me. You're going to want to hear how this ends. And make sure you check the description box below. There are more stories just like this one. Stories about people like us who were underestimated, overlooked, and then came back swinging. Let me take you back to the beginning, because this didn't start the night before Thanksgiving. It started months earlier, maybe even years, with little cuts so small I didn't realize I was bleeding out. I grew up in Connecticut in a family that looked perfect from the outside. My father, Robert, was a retired insurance executive who still wore a tie to church every Sunday. My mother, Linda, had passed away 6 years ago from breast cancer, and her death had cracked something in all of us that never quite healed. My older brother, David, was the golden child, married to a woman named Jessica who always smelled like expensive perfume and judgment. They had 3 kids, a house with a 3-car garage, and the kind of life that gets featured in local magazines under headlines like Living the Dream in Suburban America. Then there was me. I was the one who got divorced at 37 after my ex-husband, Tom, decided he'd rather start fresh with a 26-year-old dental hygienist named Brittany. I was the one who moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of the previous tenant's cat. I was the one working 60-hour weeks as a nurse at a regional hospital, coming home too exhausted to cook, microwaving leftovers in Tupperware containers that were older than some of my coworkers. I wasn't living the dream. I was surviving. And somewhere along the way, my family decided that surviving wasn't interesting enough to include. It started with the missed calls. I'd ring my dad on Sunday afternoons like I always had, and he'd answer with that distracted tone people use when they're doing something more important. "Oh, Sarah, hi. Yeah, everything's fine. Just busy. I'll call you back." He never did. Then it was the holidays. Easter came and went with a group photo posted on Facebook. David, Jessica, their kids, my dad, all smiling in pastels on someone's back deck. I wasn't in the photo. I wasn't at the dinner. I hadn't even known it was happening until I saw the pictures. When I asked David about it later, he'd shrugged. "Oh, it was last minute. We didn't think you'd be able to make it with your work schedule." They didn't think. They didn't ask. I should have seen it then, but I was still holding on to this idea that family meant something. That blood was thicker than convenience. That I mattered because I was supposed to matter. By the time October rolled around and Thanksgiving was approaching, I was desperate to feel like I belonged again. I missed my mom so much it physically hurt sometimes, this dull ache behind my ribs that never really went away. She used to make Thanksgiving feel like magic. Her cornbread stuffing, her cranberry sauce from scratch, the way she'd hum while she worked in the kitchen. After she died, we all tried to keep it going. We'd rotate houses. We'd make her recipes. We'd pretend we were still whole. This year, it was supposed to be at David's house. I confirmed it with him in early November. "Yeah, we're doing it here," he'd said. "Jessica's going all out. Turkey, ham the works. Bring a pie if you want." I'd been planning for weeks. I bought a new sweater, this soft burgundy cable knit that made me feel put together for once. I took the day off work, which wasn't easy because the hospital was always short-staffed around the holidays. I even practiced my mom's pumpkin pie recipe 3 times until I got it right, because I wanted to bring something that felt like her, like love, like I still had a place at that table. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I texted David to confirm the time. He didn't respond. I tried calling Wednesday morning. Voicemail. Then, at 9:47 p.m. Wednesday night, less than 24 hours before I was supposed to show up with my pie and my hopeful smile, my dad sent a message to the family group chat. "Looks like a bad storm's coming tomorrow. Roads might be dangerous. Let's postpone Thanksgiving. Nobody's coming over. Stay safe, everyone." I stared at that message for a long time. I was sitting on my couch in my apartment, the pie cooling on the counter, My new sweater still hanging on the back of my bedroom door with the tags on. A storm. A postponement. Nobody's coming over. Something about it felt wrong. I pulled up the weather app on my phone. Yes, there was rain in the forecast. Maybe some wind. But nothing catastrophic. Nothing that would shut down Thanksgiving for a family that had driven through worse to make it to holiday dinners before. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe my dad was just being cautious, that David was worried about his kids, that this was really about safety and not about me. But that feeling, that sick, twisting feeling in my gut, wouldn't go away. I opened Facebook. I shouldn't have. I knew I shouldn't have. But I did it anyway, and that's when my entire world tilted sideways. David's wife, Jessica, had posted a photo 20 minutes earlier. It was a shot of their dining room table, fully set with the good china, candles glowing, a golden roasted turkey in the center that looked like something out of a magazine. The caption read, "Getting ready for tomorrow. Can't wait to celebrate with family. Feeling blessed. Tomorrow. Not postponed. Tomorrow." My hand started shaking. I refreshed the page like maybe I'd misread it, like maybe it was an old photo, but no, it was fresh. Posted at 9:32 p.m. 15 minutes before my dad sent the group text about the storm. I scrolled further. There was another post from earlier in the day, this one from David. A photo of him and my dad standing in the driveway, holding bags from the grocery store, both of them grinning. Thanksgiving prep with the old man. Let's do this. They weren't postponing. They were preparing. And I wasn't invited. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who are supposed to love you no matter what, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. It's not just sadness. It's not just anger. It's this hollow, gutting realization that you were never as important as you thought you were. That you've been fooling yourself. That love, for some people, is conditional, and you stopped meeting the conditions somewhere along the way without even knowing it. I sat there on my couch, holding my phone, and I felt something inside me break. Not the loud, dramatic kind of break. The quiet kind. The kind that's permanent. And then very slowly, something else started to grow in its place. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to show up at David's door and ask them why. I already knew why. I was the inconvenient one. The divorced one. The one who reminded them that life doesn't always go according to plan. I was the evidence that their perfect suburban bubble could pop, and they didn't want me around to remind them of that. Fine. If they wanted to erase me, I'd let them. But not before I made sure they understood exactly what they'd done. Not before I made them feel every ounce of what they'd made me feel. I opened my laptop. I took screenshots of every post, every photo, every smiling face that proved they were all gathering without me while lying to my face about a storm. I saved them all in a folder on my desktop. I labeled it Thanksgiving 2024. Then I went to bed. I didn't sleep, but I went to bed, and I waited for the morning. Thanksgiving morning arrived with clear skies and cold sunshine, the kind of crisp November day that makes everything look sharper, cleaner, more honest than it really is. I woke up at 6 a.m., even though I had nowhere to be. My body was so used to hospital shifts that it didn't know how to sleep in anymore. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, staring at that pumpkin pie I'd baked with so much stupid, misguided hope. It sat there on the counter like a monument to my own denial. The family group chat was quiet. No one had said anything since my dad's message about the storm. No one had checked in to see if I was okay. No one had acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, I might be confused about why we were canceling Thanksgiving over a weather report that turned out to be nothing. At 10:47 a.m., I decided to drive by David's house. I don't know what I was expecting to accomplish. Maybe I needed to see it with my own eyes. Maybe I was hoping I was wrong, that I'd misunderstood, that there was some reasonable explanation for why they'd lied to me. David lived 20 minutes away in a neighborhood where every house looked like it had been designed by the same architect who was really into beige siding and 3-car garages. I drove slowly down his street, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. And there they were, 4 cars in the driveway. My dad's silver Buick, Jessica's white SUV, my Aunt Carol's red sedan, my cousin Greg's truck. They were all there, every single one of them. The whole family gathered at David's house for Thanksgiving, exactly like they'd planned. Exactly like they'd told me wasn't happening. I pulled over 2 houses down and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. I could see movement through the windows, shapes passing back and forth, the golden glow of lights and warmth and family. I wasn't in there. I would never be in there again. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the driveway, all those cars lined up like evidence in a trial. Then I drove home. The rest of the day passed in this strange, numb fog. I kept checking Facebook, Instagram, anywhere they might post something. And sure enough, by 3 p.m., the photos started rolling in. Jessica posted first. A picture of everyone gathered around the dining room table, plates piled high, everyone laughing. The caption, "Best celebration ever. So grateful for family." David posted a video of the kids running around the backyard, their laughter echoing. Thanksgiving chaos. Wouldn't have it any other way. My dad, who had sent that message about the storm, posted a photo of himself carving the turkey, grinning like he was the patriarch of some perfect American family. Another year, another blessing. #family first. Family first. Unless you're the family member they don't want around. I sat on my couch eating leftover Chinese food straight from the container, scrolling through their posts, feeling something dark and cold settle into my chest. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was deliberate. They had planned this. They had coordinated it. They had looked at each other and decided, collectively, that I wasn't worth including. That lying to me was easier than just being honest. And then, the next morning, Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, the messages started coming in. The first one was from David at 8:23 a.m. "Hey Sarah, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Sorry we had to postpone. Maybe we can get together this weekend." I stared at that message for 5 full minutes. The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of it. Then my dad texted, "Morning, sweetheart. How was your day yesterday? Did you stay in because of the weather?" My Aunt Carol chimed in on the group chat. "Hope everyone stayed safe during the storm. We should definitely reschedule soon." They were still lying. Even after it was over, even after they'd had their perfect day without me, they were still lying. They thought I didn't know. They thought I was stupid enough, lonely enough, desperate enough to just accept their excuses and move on. And that's when I realized something. They weren't just excluding me. They were underestimating me. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Not yet. I needed to think. I needed to plan. Because if I was going to do this, if I was going to make them understand what they'd done, I had to do it right. I spent that Friday researching. I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm serious. I sat at my laptop for hours, reading articles about family estrangement, about confrontation strategies, about how to expose lies without looking like the crazy one. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to be surgical. By Friday night, I had a plan. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Instead, I was going to do exactly what they'd done to me. I was going to show them I didn't need them. I was going to make them invisible. But first, I was going to make sure they knew I knew. On Saturday morning, I created a new group chat. I added everyone who had been at David's house, my dad, David, Jessica, my Aunt Carol, my cousin Greg, everyone who had been part of the lie. Then I sent a single message with all the screenshots attached. The weather forecast, showing clear skies. The Facebook posts about tomorrow's celebration. The photos of their cars in David's driveway. The pictures of them all gathered around the table, laughing, lying. I typed one sentence beneath the screenshots. I hope the storm didn't cause too much damage. I hit send. And then I left the group chat. I blocked every single one of them on my phone. On Facebook. On Instagram. On every platform where they could reach me. I deleted their numbers. I removed their birthdays from my calendar. I took down every family photo in my apartment and put them in a box in the back of my closet. If they wanted me gone, I was gone. Completely. My hands were shaking when I finished, but it wasn't fear. It was power. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I wasn't waiting for them to include me. I wasn't hoping they'd remember I existed. I was done. And if you're sitting there right now thinking I should have just talked to them, should have asked them why, should have tried to fix it, let me ask you this. How many times do you let people hurt you before you stop giving them chances? How many times do you forgive betrayal before you realize that forgiveness without accountability is just permission to hurt you again? I was done being the one who bent, who accommodated, who made myself smaller so they'd be more comfortable. They had made their choice. Now I was making mine. The fallout from that message was immediate, and it was chaotic. Within an hour of me sending those screenshots and leaving the group chat, my phone started blowing up, or at least it tried to. I'd blocked them all, so I didn't see the calls or texts in real time. But I knew they were happening. I could feel it in the air, this electric charge of panic and fury that I wasn't there to absorb. Later, a friend of mine named Rachel, someone who was still Facebook friends with Jessica, told me what had happened behind the scenes. Apparently, Jessica had a full meltdown. She called my dad in hysterics, demanding to know how I'd found out. David had started blaming Jessica for posting the photos too early. My Aunt Carol had tried to play peacemaker, saying maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe I'd gotten the dates confused. A misunderstanding. Right. Because I'd somehow hallucinated the part where they all lied to my face and then posted photos of themselves having the time of their lives without me. Rachel told me my dad had tried to call me 17 times that Saturday. 17. The same man who hadn't returned one of my calls in months suddenly needed to talk to me urgently. When he couldn't reach me, he started leaving voicemails. Rachel managed to get one of them forwarded to her, and she sent it to me with a message that just said, "You need to hear this." I almost didn't listen. I'd worked so hard to cut them out, to reclaim my peace, and I knew that hearing his voice would crack something open inside me that I just barely managed to seal shut. But curiosity won. Or maybe it was something darker than curiosity. Maybe I needed to know what excuse they'd come up with, what story they'd spin to make themselves the victims. I listened to the voicemail on Sunday afternoon, sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot before my evening shift. "Sarah, it's Dad. Look, I don't know what you think you saw, but you need to call me back so we can talk about this like adults. You're blowing this way out of proportion. We were trying to protect you, okay? You've been so stressed with work, and we didn't want you driving in bad weather. We thought it was better to just postpone. That's all. You're making this into something it's not, and you're upsetting the whole family. Your brother is beside himself. Jessica is crying. This isn't fair to them, Sarah. Whatever you're going through, you don't take it out on the people who love you. Call me back. Please." I sat there in my car, staring at the phone screen, and I felt this wave of something I can't quite describe. It wasn't anger. It was almost clarity. Because in that voicemail, my dad had done exactly what I'd expected him to do. He'd rewritten the narrative. He'd made himself the reasonable one. He'd made me the unstable one, the one who was overreacting, the one who was causing problems for everyone else. He'd turned my justified hurt into my character flaw. And the thing that really got me, the thing that made my hands tighten around the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, was that phrase, "The people who love you." If they loved me, they wouldn't have lied. If they loved me, they would have just told me the truth, no matter how much it hurt. If they loved me, they would have at least tried to include me, or been honest about why they couldn't. But they didn't love me. Not really. They loved the version of me that was convenient. The version that didn't ask too many questions or demand too much space. The version that quietly accepted being erased. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't call him back. The next few weeks were strange. I kept waiting for the guilt to hit, for that nagging voice in the back of my head to tell me I'd overreacted, that I should be the bigger person, that family is family, and you have to forgive them. But the guilt never came. Instead, I started to feel lighter. I didn't have to brace myself for disappointment anymore. I didn't have to wonder if this would be the holiday I'd finally be included, or if this would be the phone call that proved they still cared. I didn't have to perform for people who were never going to see me the way I needed to be seen. I started spending time with the people who actually showed up for me. Rachel became one of my closest friends. I started having dinners with some of my coworkers from the hospital, other nurses who understood what it was like to work soul-crushing shifts and still try to build a life outside of scrubs and sanitizer. I joined a book club at the local library. I adopted a cat from the shelter, a scraggly orange tabby named Hank who had one torn ear and a perpetual attitude problem. He was perfect. I even started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Ellen Grayson, and she was this no-nonsense woman in her 60s who didn't believe in coddling. In our third session, I told her about Thanksgiving, about the screenshots, about cutting them all off. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "No," I said. "And I meant it." "Good," she said. "Because you didn't overreact." You responded. There's a difference. Overreacting is disproportionate to the harm. What you did was proportionate. They lied to you. They excluded you. They dismissed your worth. You removed yourself from a situation where you were being harmed. That's not revenge. That's self-preservation. Self-preservation. I held on to that phrase like a lifeline. But here's the thing about cutting toxic people out of your life. They don't always stay gone. Especially when they start to realize there are consequences to their actions. Especially when the holidays roll around again and they need someone to blame for why their family gatherings don't feel as complete anymore. It was the first week of December when I got the letter. It came in the mail, addressed in my dad's handwriting. I almost threw it away without opening it, but something stopped me. Maybe I was hoping he'd finally apologize. Maybe I was hoping for closure. Maybe I was just tired of pretending I didn't care. I opened it. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on his old stationery with his initials embossed at the top. I won't recite the whole thing here, but the gist of it was this. He missed me. David missed me. The family wasn't the same without me. They'd made a mistake, and they were sorry if I'd been hurt, but I needed to understand that they'd had their reasons. They'd been trying to spare me from feeling obligated. They'd thought I'd be happier not having to deal with the stress of a big family gathering. There it was again. That same gaslighting. That same rewriting of reality. They'd excluded me for my own good. And then, at the end of the letter, the real kicker. "We'd love to have you over for Christmas. Let's start fresh. Life's too short to hold grudges. Love, Dad." I read that line over and over. Life's too short to hold grudges. As if what I was doing was holding a grudge. As if this was about me being petty or stubborn. As if I hadn't spent years trying to hold on to a family that didn't want to hold on to me. I folded the letter up, put it back in the envelope, and placed it in the same box as the family photos. Then I sat down and wrote my own letter. I never sent it, but I needed to write it, needed to get the words out, even if they'd never be read. I wrote about how much it had hurt to lose my mom, and how much worse it hurt to realize that without her, I didn't really have a family anymore. I wrote about every missed phone call, every holiday I wasn't invited to, every time they made me feel like I was an inconvenience. I wrote about Thanksgiving, about the lies, about the screenshots that proved what I'd always suspected, that I was expendable. And then I wrote this. You taught me something important. You taught me that I don't need people who only want me around when it's convenient. I don't need people who love me conditionally. I don't need people who lie to my face and then act confused when I call them on it. I deserve better. And for the first time in my life, I'm choosing better. I folded that letter, too. I put it in the box with the photos and the other letter. And then I moved on. Christmas came and went. I didn't go to my dad's house. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't send cards or gifts or any signal that I was softening. Instead, I spent Christmas Eve volunteering at the hospital, covering a shift for a coworker who had young kids at home. I spent Christmas Day with Rachel and her family, eating her mom's brisket and playing board games with her nephews. It was loud and chaotic and nothing like the pristine, staged holidays my family used to have. It was better. The thing about cutting people out of your life is that it creates space. And once you have space, you start to realize how much energy you were spending on people who didn't deserve it. You start to notice the ways you've been dimming your own light just to make other people comfortable. I started traveling. Nothing extravagant. I didn't have that kind of money, but weekend trips to places I'd always wanted to see. I drove up to Vermont in February to see the snow. I went to Nashville in March and listened to live music in dive bars until 2 in the morning. I visited the ocean in Maine in April and stood on the rocks with the wind in my hair and felt, for the first time in years, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I also started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and walks in the park with men who seemed nice enough but never quite clicked. And then in late spring, I met someone named Peter at a hospital fundraiser. He was a teacher, soft-spoken and thoughtful, with kind eyes and a terrible sense of humor that made me laugh anyway. We started seeing each other regularly. He didn't push. He didn't pry. He just showed up. Consistently. Honestly. It was such a foreign feeling that it took me weeks to trust it. By the time summer rolled around, I realized something. I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not the performative kind of happy I used to post on social media to prove I was okay. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need an audience. And then, in August, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Jessica. "Sarah," she said, her voice tight and clipped. "We need to talk." I didn't say anything. I just waited. "Your dad had a heart attack," she said. "He's in the hospital. He's stable, but it was serious. He's asking for you." My first instinct was to hang up. My second instinct was to say something cruel, something that would hurt her the way she'd hurt me. But I didn't do either of those things. Instead, I asked, "Which hospital?" She told me. I said I'd think about it. Then I hung up. I didn't go right away. I needed time to process. Time to figure out what I wanted, what I owed, and what I didn't. Dr. Grayson helped me work through it in our next session. "You don't owe him forgiveness," she said. "But you might owe yourself closure. Only you can decide what that looks like." I thought about it for 2 days. And then I went. I walked into that hospital room, the same hospital where I worked, which felt like some kind of cosmic irony, and I saw my dad lying there, smaller and frilier than I'd ever seen him. David was sitting in a chair by the window. Jessica was in the hallway, probably avoiding me. My dad opened his eyes when I walked in. "Sarah," he said, and his voice cracked. "I'm here," I said, "but I'm not staying long." He nodded. David looked at me like he didn't know what to say. "I'm glad you're okay," I said to my dad, "but I need you to understand something. I didn't come here because I forgive you. I came here because I needed to see for myself that you're alive. That's it. That's all this is." "Sarah," David started, but I held up my hand. "No," I said. "You don't get to talk. You had a whole year to talk to me, to apologize, to acknowledge what you did. You didn't. So now you listen." I looked at both of them, these men who were supposed to protect me, to love me, to fight for me. "You erased me," I said. "You lied to me. You made me feel like I was crazy for believing I mattered to you. And when I called you on it, you tried to make it my fault. You tried to gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. But I wasn't. I was seeing you clearly for the first time in my life. And what I saw was that you didn't value me enough to tell me the truth." My dad's eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't undo what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back the holidays I spent alone. Sorry doesn't fix the years I wasted trying to earn your love." I turned to leave, and then I stopped. "I hope you get better," I said. "I really do. But I'm not coming back. I've built a life without you, and it's a good life. It's a life where people show up for me, where people tell me the truth, where I don't have to shrink myself to fit into someone else's idea of family." I walked out of that room, and I didn't look back. They tried to reach out a few more times after that. David sent texts. Jessica sent a card. My dad left one more voicemail, asking if we could try again. I didn't respond to any of it. Because here's what I learned. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's not a gift you give to people who hurt you just because they say they're sorry. Forgiveness is something you give yourself when you're ready to let go of the weight of what was done to you. And I let go. Not because they earned it, but because I deserved peace. It's been over a year since that Thanksgiving. I'm 44 now. I still work at the hospital. I still have Hank the cat. Peter and I moved in together last month. Rachel and I take trips whenever we can. I've started painting again, something I used to love as a kid but gave up because I thought I wasn't good enough. I'm building a life that's mine. A life that doesn't require anyone's permission or approval. A life where I'm not the one left out, because I'm the one who gets to decide who's in. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this. You are not obligated to keep people in your life who treat you like you don't matter. You are not selfish for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not the villain in someone else's story just because you refuse to be their victim. So if you've ever been the one left out, the one lied to, the one who wasn't enough, know that you are enough. You always were. They just couldn't see it. And that's not your failure. It's theirs. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt what I felt, drop a comment and let me know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And make sure you check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about people who were underestimated, overlooked, and then found their way back to themselves. You're not alone, and you're stronger than you think.